Welcome to the 19th episode of the Building Interactive website series, where we'll learn to simplify conditional statements as well as combine them to create more specific criteria. So right now we know about the if statement and the else statement, as well as how to come up with basic conditions. However, the problem is that we cannot test multiple conditions with the same if-else statement, as in have else ifs to check other conditions as well. And additionally, if we're just picking a value based on a condition and not running a whole block of code, then writing if else is kind of long and tedious. So we probably need a shorter way of doing it. So here I have some simple code that simply checks for a number's value. So if I were to run it, since this number variable is 25, that means it's equal to 25, and 25 detected prints out in the console. However, if I were to do some other number like 24, you can see it prints some other number detected, because 24 is not equal to 25. However, what if we wanted to check if the number is 24 as well? The way we can do it is by putting another if-else block here inside the else. And then we can check if the number is equal to 24. And then we can print out 24 detected. And if both of these conditions fail, we can print some other number detected. So now both of these conditions are being checked. And there are more than two possible results now. However, we can also get rid of these curly braces after the first outer else. And you can see that it still works the same way. This is because if you were to create an if statement, and we can just say true here just so that it always runs, just to prove this point easier. If you just have a single statement, like just a single console.log call, then you don't need the curly braces. You can just put the statement directly after the condition in parentheses. So as you can see, this code still works, and it says, hey. And we can also change the condition to false, and it'll still work. And this will still work with any condition. And because of this, the fact that it works with single statements without the curly braces, we can put the else and if on the same line and then unindent the rest of the if-else statements. Then you can see it still works exactly the same way. It checks for the number and then it prints out a specific message. And so in between the if and else, you can also put else ifs to check for other intermediate conditions. The next concept we'll be going over is called the conditional operator. And it's basically the if statement but simplified and for values only, not full blocks of code with many statements. What this allows us to do is simplify things like these, which all log a differing string to the console. So instead of doing all of these separate console.log statements inside this if else, this collection of blocks, we could just use a single console.log statement, and then inside the parentheses, and how the conditional operator works is you put the condition at the front and then a question mark and then the value to return if the condition is true, and then a colon and then a value to return if false. So in this case, let's start with checking if the number's equal to 25. So we can replace condition with my num triple equals 25. And then if it's true, we want to print out 25 detected. And then value of false can be, for now, some other number detected to simulate how it was at the start of the video. And so if we go the console, you can see 23 is not 25, so it prints out some other number detected. But when it's 25, it prints out 25 detected. So as you can see, this still works exactly the same way as before. It's just that it's much more simplified into just a single statement with the if-else logic inside the function call. However, we can also chain these conditional operators to have multiple conditions. And the way you do this is after the value that you want to return after the first condition, you can put a colon, and then you can you can put another condition inside here. So I can say my num triple equals 24, and then we'd print out 24 detected for that one. And then we can put a colon and then the value to put if it's neither 25 nor 24. Now we can delete this code and we can see that if we clear the console, you can fully see that this works exactly the same way as before. If it's 25, then 25 is detected because it first checks here and then it realizes it's 25 and then it just prints out this. And then 24, it's not 25, so skip this, but it is 24, so print out 24 detected. But if it's some number other than 25 and 24, then it's not 25, so skip this. Then it's not 24, so skip this. So the only other option is some other number detected, which is what prints out here. So here, as you can see, I have some other code that checks if a number is greater than or equal to 26, and then checks again if this is true, that it's less than or equal to 36. Or in other words, it checks if both of these are true, which means that this number is between 26 and 36 due to the way that the less than and or equal to and greater than or equal to operators work. So you can see this code only accepts values in that range. So if I were to do something less than 26, it wouldn't work. But if I were to do a value between 26 and 36, it would work. However, if I do something above 36, then it will not work. However, we can actually combine both of these if statements into one by making use of the AND operator, which is two ampersand characters like this. So the way we can do that is by firstly getting rid of this inner or outer ending curly brace here, and then to make it more readable, re-indent this section of code, and then we can bring the two conditions together in the same pair of parentheses here, and then do the two ampersands between them, and now you can see it works exactly the same way. It's checking if both of the conditions are satisfied. And as you can see, it works exactly the same way as before. So here, as you can see, I have another example with two variables this time. So as you can see, we have a compound condition in here that uses the AND operator to check if both conditions are true. So as you can see, value 1 is equal to 5. 5 is greater than 3. And so 1, which is val 2, is not greater than 2. So it's true and false, so that means it's false. However, if we were to make val 2 satisfy its condition, then you can see it prints out the conditions are met. And if we set val 1 to a number that's not greater than 3, you can see nothing prints out. However, sometimes we want to make it so that only one of the conditions has to be met for this code to run. And the way we can do that is by making use of the OR operator, or two vertical bars like this. So this way, it'll check if value 1 is greater than 3. 2 is not greater than 3, so it's false. But we can still check value 2 to see if it meets its condition. And so value 2 is 3. 3 is greater than 2, so it's false or true, which makes it true. So if we run the code, you can see, and we should probably rephrase it to say one of the conditions is met. And now you can see it prints it out because one of the conditions were met. And if both of the conditions are met, if we change value 1 to meet its condition of being greater than 3, you can see it still prints it out, because even if both the conditions are true, when you combine them with OR, it still returns true. So it's not like it has to be just one or the other, it can be both as well. And then just to prove that it works if only one of the conditions are met, if we change value 2 to be 1, which is not greater than 2, you can see it still prints out, because value 1, 5 is still greater than 3. There's also the not operator, an exclamation mark, which checks if the condition is false. In other words, it inverts the condition. So currently, as you can see, we have code that checks if the value specified here is greater than 3. And you can see when we run it, 5 is greater than 3, so it prints out. However, in this case, I want to change this so it checks if the value is not greater than 3. And so the way I can do that is by surrounding the condition in parentheses so that I can select the whole thing and then put an exclamation mark before it, which will invert the condition. If it's true, it'll become false, and if it's false, it'll become true. So now you can see nothing prints out because the value is greater than 3. However, if I make it not greater than 3, then you can see it now prints out the correct output. This final example that we'll go over here is more of a conceptual example and not necessarily an actual working one, but the order of operations of these logical operators is as follows. Firstly, all the not operators are evaluated from left to right throughout the whole expression, and then the AND operators are evaluated from left to right, and then finally the ORs from left to right. However, you can change this order by using parentheses if the default order doesn't work for you. So if I surround this with parentheses, then now this OR operation will be evaluated first, and then there are no other parentheses here inside these outer ones. So then it goes to this NOT operation, and then finally the AND operation to finish it off. So you can use parentheses surrounding a compound condition inside another one in order to change the order that it's evaluated in. This concludes part 2 of conditional statements in JavaScript. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. And please be sure to watch out for the 20th episode of the series.